A hearty and warm welcome to all of you who have come to this edition of our Vimarsh series of talks to listen to Honorable Professor Jagadesh Kumar, who is the Vice-Chancellor of Jawaharlal Nehru University and who has today conducted a convocation, and he was telling me after 46 years. So that's also an interesting uh, s- subject as to why a university holds its convocation after 46 years. But anyway, that is some other time we would discuss that. Uh, Professor Jagdesh Kumar will talk to us today on technology for sustainable development. And I'm really grateful to him to have found time on a busy day like this and come to the Vimarsha series of talks. Vimarsh is a platform which is now very well known, and we have had the pleasure of having eminent people interacting with the public from this platform on a variety of subjects. And thank you very much for coming to and agreeing to our request and coming to the VIF. Uh, Professor Jagadesh Kumar became the Vice Chancellor of the GNU in January 2016. And he is still a teacher, and he teaches his subject at IIT Delhi, from where he is on lien to GNU. And I think you take a weekly class, and he's a very popular student and very well regarded. So he's continuing with his passion of teaching and research at IIT Delhi, uh, while discharging the functions of Vice Chancellor of Jawaharlal Nehru University. Uh, Professor Jagdesh Kumar obtained his MS and PhD from the Department of Electrical Engineering, IIT Madras. And he did his postdoctoral research with Professor David Ralston, a renowned scientist at the Department of Electrical and Computer Engineering, University of Waterloo, Canada. Professor Jagdesh Kumar's area of research is nano-electronic devices, nanoscale device modeling and simulation, innovative device design, power semiconductor devices, and he has published uh, extensively uh, in his name and also with his students. And six patent applications have also been filed based on his research. Friends, the subject today, namely technology and sustainability, is a very apt one. And I think we need a deeper understanding of the connection between technology and sustainable development. The progress of civilization has always been underpinned by advances in technology. As mankind and civilization have grown, I think technology has been an integral part of that evolution. And in today's day and age, technology is the key driver of globalization. But it has two sides to it. On one hand, it has helped the mankind to improve its material well-being, and on the other, it has created instruments of destruction, like the weapons of mass destruction. There can be many examples that can be given how technology has both the plus side to it and also the underside to it. But whatever it may be, technology has a major impact on society and social behavior, both positive as well as negative. In India, technology is being used to improve governance and for improving the well being of the people. And our Prime Minister is a very strong proponent of the use of technology for improving the well being of our people. In fact, India needs more of technology than less to solve its major problems. But questions about technology will always remain. The debate about the impact of emerging technologies like the artificial intelligence, big data, 3D printing, and many others on jobs and privacy, they have become universal. So this, these issues are being debated everywhere. There are also some people who say, and I read somewhere that I think it was President Putin who said that the one who rules data will rule the world. And this is actually a play on the phrase of Mackinder, who said that one who rules Eurasia, the heartland, that will rule the world. But now it is about data. And today, almost every company, though it may be in the manufacturing, it may be in agriculture, or maybe in any other field, is essentially a data company. So the importance of data is now cannot be overstated, and the emergence of large data driven platforms is also I think that requires it's bringing in a paradigm shift in what how we think about development and particularly sustainable development. The such platforms like the e-commerce platforms today have a impact on the entire production chain from production to consumption. The entire value chain today is driven by data, and those these platforms, data platforms that we are creating, the e-commerce platform, for example, they have not only just they are creating jobs, but they're also controlling the data. Technology has another dimension as well, and that is its impact on the environment. Modern production processes based on technologies of last couple of centuries have had, on the whole, a negative impact on the environment. The emergence of climate change as existential threat is directly related to the use of fossil fuel based technologies. On the whole, environmental degradation and loss of biodiversity as a result of modern methods of production based on latest technologies is an issue of concern. The question today is how can technology help in making development sustainable? Technology is there to stay. It would be foolish to say that we don't need technology. There's no question of going back to the bullock cart age. But can technology make development sustainable? Because sustainable development is the issue of our times. And also, a related question, particularly in the context of India and developing countries, is the access and affordability to technology. Now, one can take a positive view of technology and say that technology can help make development sustainable. There's no doubt about that. It can make a huge difference in the lives of people in the areas of food and agriculture, health, education, energy, transportation, housing, environment, and so on. Without technology, all this will not happen. And World Economic Forum's, if you look at their list, among the top 10 technologies, they most of them have a clear environmental and social focus. So whether it be it energy efficiency, water purification, precise drug delivery, nanoscale engineering, organic electronics, photovoltaics, and many others. Related question is also about investment. Investment in clean technology is now on the rise. I understand, I saw some figures like renewable energy, for instance. There is over 5 years, 2007 to 12, $2 trillion worth of investment went into renewable energies, green construction, smart grids, energy efficiency, and so on. So a lot of investment is going into these clean and green technologies, which would supposedly make development more sustainable. But again, whether these technologies would be available to us, and if so, at what price, Who will control these technologies? So these are very important questions which also one has to ponder over. And also these social problems and ethical problems, these cannot be resolved by technology alone. So technology is a necessary condition, but it is not a sufficient condition. One would need financial resources, one would need a conducive business environment, a culture of innovation, and good governance to really take advantage of the potential of technology for sustainable development. For developing countries, as I said, affordability and access is a major issue. And we also need to avoid the technology divide. There's already a digital divide. There's already so many divides in this world, and technology can accentuate that divide. So there are many issues like that. It's just a rambling list. But to talk about some of these issues, we have Professor Jagadesh Kumar. He will talk to us about some of these issues and many more. So I request Professor Jagadesh Kumar to deliver his talk. Thank you. Yeah.
So don't move anything there. Thank you very much for inviting me to have an interaction with you. I'm aware that there is a very distinguished audience here coming from different backgrounds. So therefore, I will try to make my presentation in such a way that all of you have something to take home from my presentation. And perhaps at the end of the presentation, we can even discuss and get a better clarity on the topic that we are discussing today. Dr. Arvind Gupta has very nicely provided an abstract of what I am going to present here today. So I am going to expand on the issues that he has touched upon during his initial introduction. So obviously, I'm going to spend some time discussing about technology, and then I will take you step by step to the sustainable development and see how the whole cycle can be completed. I will use some pictures and some slides here. At any time during the presentation, when you see something there, if you feel like laughing, smiling, don't hold it. Laugh. Laugh to your full heart. Let me first begin with a picture of a monkey. The size of the brain of a monkey is about 5 centimeters and the weight is about 100 grams. And the human brain is about 15 centimeters and it weighs about 1400 grams. So that means the neural cell density is more than an order of magnitude in human brain. So here the monkey is trying to break a coconut using a stone. So obviously it doesn't know the scientific principles, it doesn't know the technology. It's only trying to display its skill in using this stone. So that is why we call this a technique. It's not technology. But when you go to Ajanta cave paintings, you see those beautiful paintings there, which have survived for thousands of years, more than 2000 years. And how is that? What kind of technology did they use? How could these paintings survive for so many years? No, it's a puzzle for many of us. This is Bodhisattva painting. Robert Curl, if there is anyone who is from the chemistry background, you would immediately recognize him as the Nobel Prize winner for inventing this soccer ball shaped carbon molecule known as fullerene. And the invention of fullerene led to the invention of carbon nanotube, of which all of you are familiar. So when he visited India some time ago to attend the Indian Science Congress, he mentioned that the painters who painted these paintings, they actually used nanoparticles. Now, did the people who painted for years and years, for decades on these walls of the caves, did they know the technology exactly? And how did they arrive at such advanced technology in those times, thousands of years ago? If you look at the picture here, this is something about a steel known as Wood's steel. This steel was produced from 4th century to 17th century in India, in a location in Telangana. That is why this Wood's steel is also called Ukku in Telugu. Now, this steel is extremely strong and it's also flexible, and that is why Indians used to export this steel, and Arabs also took this to Damascus. And these knives that you see, they are called Damascus knives. And these small circles that you see, they are carbon nanotubes. The carbon nanotubes that just now I mentioned, which was invented in 1991 and who got Nobel Prize. And these carbon nanotubes are used here. So how did they arrive at those kind of technologies? This technology, of course, doesn't survive now in India. About 400 years ago, this technology disappeared from India. So therefore, the question comes in our mind, what exactly is technology? When you talk about science, we all know that when we deal with science, we are studying nature. We are studying the principles which control this nature. But when you use scientific knowledge for practical applications, that is when we say we are developing technology. When we are developing technology, basically we are developing tools which will make our life simpler and comfortable. So you are seeing different kinds of hardware tools here. On the other hand, these are slightly advanced technological tools. But however, you know that in today's world, no telephone works without software. In fact, most of the electronic devices that we use, they are software driven, right? Um, you may not know that less than 1% of human beings actually write software, but it's 5 billion human beings who use those software driven electronic devices. So today, even software also is technology, software technology, hardware technology, and software technology. On the other hand, if I send a satellite to space, there's a lot of technology involved here. How to make the fuels which are very, very energy efficient, how to guide this rocket using communication technology. And when I put this satellite in the space, and if I am providing internet services to you, then providing services also becomes technology. So hardware, software, and service oriented technology. So you have different kinds of technologies. And today technology has become all pervasive. You know, young parents often they keep telling each other, you know, my son or my daughter can handle the phone or laptop very, very nicely. So technology has become all pervasive. But however, it is also influencing the way we are living. As Dr. Arvind Gupta mentioned a little while ago, it is seriously affecting the way we live. For example, you see here, if kids use these laptops and phones so regularly, so often, it actually affects their motor control. And they will not be able to actually hold a pencil and pen if they are used to laptops. So, therefore, um, we need to understand how technology is changing the way we live. Kids, of course, learn the technology much faster. And you will recognize this fellow here. And he's asking a school kid, uh, you do my website and I will do your homework. I know how many of you maintain your websites. Um, uh, we find it difficult, whereas kids can do it much faster. This is a picture of Manipuri dancers, and everybody is busy with the cell phones. So the way we are living is actually changing with time. Here, two parents, and they are typing a message, and they say, "Dear Andy, how have you been? Your mother and I are fine. we miss you. Please sign off your computer and come downstairs for something to eat. Love that. So it's happening very often. And if with technology, we would like to make everything very small and mobile. TVs are becoming very smaller, but it's also changing us. The arrow there is unintentional, but human beings are changing. Um, if you think only people like us are affected, even saints seem to be affected with modern technology. While discussing about karma and rebirth, one of the saints is saying that blame it on the materialistic life I had, but whenever I meditate on the secrets of longevity, I cannot think beyond lithium polymer rechargeable batteries. 10 years ago, if you ever saw somebody um, drowning like this in water, we would have jumped to save him. But today, this is what we do. We take photographs. Some of you are actually smiling, but I just saw this news in Times of India. People made videos in Delhi bus while my brother was killed. That is how we are changing as human beings. This is a boy, a child is just pulled out, and the mother is saying, doctor, please tell me, boy or girl, I want to update status on Facebook. So life has changed completely with the absorption of technology. In fact, experts say that compared to the changes that have occurred in our life during last 30 years, and if you compare it with what happened during last 300 years, perhaps human societies have seen such drastic changes only twice or thrice in the entire beginning, from the beginning of the human races. So today we are in the midst of one such significant transformational change that is happening in our lives. And all that has happened because technology has become within our reach. Technology has made devices very cheap, it has made mobile, and this has begun with the developments in semiconductor technology. And that is an area in which I work, nanotechnology, nano electronics. So the costs became smaller and smaller, the systems became very, very reliable, they have become very mobile, and that is the reason why we are absorbing technology very significantly in our lives. If you look at this dirty piece of an object, what do you think is it? What do you think is that? Nanotube. You are a bit advanced. That's actually a piece of human hair. It's a piece of human hair. The diameter of the human hair is about 60 microns. But if I cut this diameter into about 10,000 times, then each dimension is about 1 nanometer. So when we are dealing with materials whose dimension is only about 1 to 100 nanometers, then we are dealing with what is known as nanotechnology. So at nanoscale, you can make nanoparticles, you can make nanowires, you can make nanoflowers, and so on. So if I show you an object like this is called bulk material because it's huge in size. But when I break it down into nanoscale particles, then its behavior completely changes. Its physical and chemical behavior changes. And that is the reason why today nanotechnology has become the most sought after technology because you can build lots of applications using these interesting properties of these materials. Um, when the science began in olden days, 100 years ago, 150 years ago, a physicist could have been a chemist could have been a biologist. There were no boundaries at all. But later we got into different kinds of disciplines. But today, with the arrival of the nanotechnology, again these boundaries are disappearing. A physicist necessarily has to know something about biology or something about chemistry if you want to really work in nanotechnology area. And that is the reason why today nanotechnology plays a significant role, whether it is drugs or whether it is electronics or textiles or energy, defense, and security. So it's a very, very important technology and highly interdisciplinary technology. So with all this technology, why is that now we are discussing about technology and sustainable development? If you look at this picture, in olden days, if you imagine the life of people who lived 500 years ago, 1000 years ago, they were leading a very simple life. And at the end of the day, after finishing all their work, If there is any surplus at home, it could be milk, it could be vegetable, it could be rice. We used to share with each other, and that helped in building better human relations with each other. We were living in a situation of abundance. Life, of course, was difficult in those times, but it was socially satisfying, personally satisfying. But however, it seems that we have moved from that situation of abundance to situation of scarcity. Everything seems to be scarce in today's world, with even with all these technological developments. So what has gone wrong? Why is that we are now worried about sustainable development? As our lives became more and more urban oriented lives, um, if you want to build a society like this, which is completely urban oriented, you require two things. You require energy, and you require lots of materials to build these kind of systems, societies. But unfortunately, we are creating systems where there is no return path for the materials and energy. What comes out of this system, if I take this city as a system, what comes out is heat and the toxins and garbage. That is what comes out. And if you continue with this kind of no path for materials and energy usage, there is bound to be a lot of difficulty for the human societies. That is the reason why we are now thinking about sustainability. When the Industrial Revolution began, in those days, we used to think that development means meeting the requirement of the people in the present. But if you look at here, even in the present, in the backdrop, this is a slum area in Bombay, and you see there a lot of buildings. So there is a lot of inequality in today's world. But however, increasingly, experts are now realizing that development doesn't mean that. What development means is development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. That is what is real development. So, when we want to build a sustainable society, earlier we used to think that if somehow if we can protect our environment, then we can build a sustainable society. But however, it is now well known among the experts and scholars that there are three components if you want to build a sustainable society. It is not just only environment, you also need to look at the economy, you also need to look at the society. Dr. Arvind Gupta was mentioning about ethics and values in the society. So, unless you look at these three components comprehensively, we will not be able to build the sustainable world. So, let me put forward my arguments. Let me try to justify my argument. And I hope that at the end of my lecture, if you are convinced, then I will be happy. So let me now focus on environment. I will take few minutes to discuss this. When we talk about environment, the first thing that we think is the biodiversity, and then the materials in the environment, and the third one, the biophysical interactions, and the most important one is the energy. So if I look at the biodiversity, you're all familiar how nature has built this biodiversity in order to have a kind of equilibrium in the ecosystem. There are nearly, I think, 2 million varieties of life forms that scientists have recognized, and there could be tens of millions of life forms on Earth, but they live in a very, very balanced way without affecting each other. But however, when we start using these materials for our own living, these life forms, nature has a very interesting way of continuous way of using these materials. Then I will show you one simple example how nature uses this materials. This is a simple example of a hydrologic cycle. You have the water evaporating and then condensing, and then it is percolating, and then underground water, and you have rivers. The whole cycle is complete. Similarly, uh, if I look at the next slide, there is a dead horse here. There is a vulture. It is eating the flesh of this dead horse. And if some bones are left out, some insects may eat. So there is a continuous cycle while using these materials. But the moment human beings came into picture, this continuity is broken. So as a result of that, what has happened is these biophysical interactions are affected. And this has brought a discontinuity in the usage of the materials. And the result, of course, is, if I want to give an example, is the e-waste. This is a perfect example of the discontinuity created by human beings in the usage of the materials. In East Asia itself, the e-waste that is being generated is rising about 60% every year. We don't know what to do with this e-waste. Um, uh, One of the biggest problems with the e-waste is we don't yet know a good scientific way of recycling this. The reason for that is that this e-waste contains a complex combination of materials. Predominantly, it is metals, and then you have plastics, you have other kinds of cables, polymers, and so on. Because we don't know how to recycle this, the easiest thing that we do is we burn it. When you burn it, you're obviously destroying the environment, all kinds of pollutions. Or people simply melt it in acids in order to recover the metals. But then you are producing toxins and you will mix that with water. And in fact, people who work with this recycling of this e-waste, they undergo different kinds of diseases, cancer, and so on. So this is a major problem. The moment you break the discontinuity, this problem comes. So therefore, today, people who are in the business of designing these electronic systems are thinking in terms of designing systems which can be repaired, which can be recycled. If you take your cell phone, for example, it is unrepairable. If the microphone is wrong, bad, or the speaker is bad, I can't pull it out and put it back, another one. And then every 1 year, 2 years, we are upgrading our phones. So therefore, it is important that we design. The reason why I have shown this picture is the fellow who is sitting there is not a scientist and technologist. He is an ordinary villager. But if you look at the materials that are used for this bullock cart, there are only three materials that are used. He has used wood, he has used iron, and he has used some fiber which comes from the local plants. And the entire bullock cart is repairable and it is recyclable, right? I don't know how many of you have driven a bullock cart. I don't know driving because I don't have a car, but I have driven this bullock cart with my mother sitting in the back behind on the bullock cart. So it is therefore important now that the systems that we build should be designed for repair and recycling. So the other important issue that we need to look at when we talk about the environment is the energy. Um, the energy consumption is going up. Today, the average energy consumption per person per day in US is about 11 kilowatts. The average energy consumption per person per day in Europe is about 5.5 kilowatts. In India, it's about 1 kilowatt. But with our demands growing, it is quite possible that we will not be able to generate the required power. So then what will we do? Let me have a look at it. This is a picture that most of you know, that most of our energy requirements are met from fossil fuel, which is close to about 80%. We have very, very little component of this renewable energy. And even in the renewable energy, you see that most of the renewable energy, even up to 2040, most of the renewable energy actually comes from the hydropower. And in 2018 here, this is where we are, you see that the solar power component is very, very small. So it is important that we expand the renewable energy resources, and it is important that we depend more on the solar power. Um, India is endowed with a lot of solar energy. You can see major parts of India get very good sunlight. In fact, experts say that nearly 84% of our energy requirements can simply be met by using solar power. So it is that kind of potential that our country has. But however, I would like to bring to your notice excessive dependence on solar power also can cause problems. Because in the night, what will you do? If there is no sunlight, you require batteries. But for making batteries, you require certain very specialized materials. Today, we use lithium ion batteries, and lithium is produced by only a few countries in the world, such as Australia and a few other countries. And if you are heavily dependent on this solar power, then you need to depend on those people to supply the batteries, and that will make our life very, very difficult. That is the reason why educational institutes, research institutes, they have to do research in order to find alternate materials which can be used for making batteries. So this is a biggest challenge and also opportunity for India to develop the battery technology. The last 150 years or so, the battery technology has not evolved at the same rate that what you are seeing in automobile industry or in semiconductor technology. So there is a lot to do in battery technology. There are of course powerful lobbies in coal related power sector and other oil related power sector who say that solar and wind energy is not good. But however, the best part of the solar and wind energy is that they are highly reliable. You install this system for next 25 years, you forget about it. There's not much maintenance, and they are highly reliable systems. So India has to look at this energy as a possible component for us for sustainable society. The other issue that I want to look at very briefly is the economy. When we talk about economy, uh, uh, Dr. Gupta has mentioned about the technology and the funding that is required and the markets and the employment. See, the major economies in the world today are driven by innovations in different areas of science, genetics, information technology, physics. So it is very, very important to invest in basic research, and that requires huge amount of funding. Um, Today, many people tell me that because I am from semiconductor technology, they ask why is that India doesn't have a fab facility. But if you want to establish a fab facility, it requires close to about 40,000 to 50,000 crores. And in about 2, 3 years, this facility will become obsolete and you need to invest half of that money to keep it going. So the technology becomes very, very capital intensive. And then unless you create more jobs for people, economy cannot be sustained. When I say jobs, I'm not saying that it is a government which has to create the employment. The employment has to be self-generated also. That is why there is a lot of emphasis on encouraging our students to become entrepreneurs, so that not only they don't ask for a job, they actually create extra jobs for others. So let me spend few minutes on discussing about the technology itself. Um, you know, the economy cannot run properly unless our food system is good in India, because Indian economy is driven by agriculture. Nearly more than 60% of the people are employed in agriculture. But the problems with agriculture in our country is that we use huge amount of water. 70% of the global fresh water is required for agriculture, and about 24% of the vegetated land is actually undergoing degradation. And in India, we contribute about 17% of GDP exclusively through agriculture. So, is there something that we can do to increase the yield in agriculture to enable to these people? You remember our Prime Minister saying that the agriculture income has to be doubled. So how can we double unless we develop simple, affordable technologies and make them available to these farmers? Um, all of you know that the agricultural yield is very closely related to the soil moisture, because most of our agriculture is based on dryland agriculture. And unless the farmer knows how much moisture is there in the soil, they will not be able to plan their agricultural activities. One of the examples that I want to show you how we can help our farmers in increasing their income levels. This is a simple system developed at Indian Institute of Science. I will not go into the scientific details of this. It's a simple system which you can put into the soil, and one of the electrodes will heat, and when the heat flows to the other electrode, it can then detect and then give you an idea about the soil moisture. This is a low cost moisture sensor. This is an important point that we need to keep in mind. What is the use if I develop a soil moisture tester which costs about 10,000 rupees? No farmer will be able to use. Therefore, the emphasis is on easy to use equipment which is low cost. Only that can help our farmers. One of the main concerns for our country is the health. Yearly about 3 lakh people die of TB. Nearly 20 lakh cases of malaria are reported every year. Nearly more than 50 lakh cases of AIDS cases are reported. Nearly 2 crores of people suffer from cardiovascular diseases. 80% of these 2 crore, they come from lower and middle income sections. So you see the marginalized sections, it is not the rich man's disease anymore, the cardiovascular diseases. Even the marginalized sections get affected. India is the global center for diabetes. So therefore, there is a lot that we need to do in the health sector. Unless people are healthy, unless people are productive, our economy cannot move ahead. I come from a village. If I go to my village during my holidays, if I fall sick, I have to travel about 10 or 20 kilometers to reach the nearest doctor. So therefore, there is enormous responsibility on educational institutes, on researchers in India to develop simple techniques. Let me give you a couple of examples. Often people ask, is anything being done in IITs? Is there any technology that is coming of IITs? I want to give few examples to raise your level of confidence in the kind of work that our scientists are doing. This is a simple silicon locket developed at IIT Bombay, and this locket is just a couple of inches. You can keep it on your neck, and if you get a heart attack, it will immediately recognize that and it will send an email to the nearest doctor so that help will come immediately. So TCS is the industry partner. It is these kind of low cost affordable devices that we need to develop. And we all know how security has become a major problem in India. It could be terrorism, it could be Naxalism, it could be any other kinds of issues which can lead to security issues and affect the ordinary life of people, which will eventually affect the economy of our country. This is a simple device IIT Bombay has developed. You can see here, this is this is a cantilever here, and when a molecule related to some explosive material or some hazardous gas, when it comes here, it will immediately recognize and then send out a signal so that accidents can be averted. um, let me show you another important work that is being done in IITs. As all of you know, contaminated water is a major problem. How can we provide good drinking water to our people? This is a major issue. In IIT Madras, where I studied, there is a water technology center. Here they are developing a special kind of nanoparticles which will give you clean potable water. I want to give you a simple, this is about a minute's video, there is no sound. But this video shows how people in certain regions of West Bengal are affected by arsenic contamination in drinking water. So this center, what is called arsenic and metal removal by Indian technology, it is called Amrit. So this Amrit technology can give um, pure drinkable water almost at 5 paise per liter. Extremely cheap water can be produced using this technology. And the beauty of this technology is, unlike the filter that you use at home, it doesn't require any power. It just operates using gravity itself. And that is what it makes very, very useful for people living in villages. Um, can we come up with some useful, cheap methods of building houses for our people in villages and towns? Can we avoid using these bricks? There is an interesting experiment that is being done at IIT Madras. I want to show you a simple video here. This is glass fiber reinforced gypsum, and using this technique, you can build a house within about a couple of weeks using this special material, which is low cost material. Housing is a problem in our country. So can we come up with some alternate technologies? And these technologies will help us, will help the people to lead a comfortable life, and that will enhance their productivity, and that will improve the economy. Day 39. So in about 40 days, they were able to build this two-story building using low-cost material. Right. So this material is a low-cost material they have developed at IIT Madras, and this is now being tested in different parts of the country. Right. It is not the glass fiber that we are using for other applications. Right. You know, today we had our convocation, and it was so satisfying to see uh, three or four candidates. One of them was completely blind, coming over the stage and receiving their degrees. They worked very hard and they got PhD from one of the prestigious universities of the country. The reason why I'm telling is, when we design systems, when we think about building, when we do things in our society, we somehow do not take into consideration the needs of people who are physically challenged. I think it's also our responsibility to give equal importance to them, to look at their needs also. This is one example that I want to give you from IIT Delhi, where I work as a professor. Um, this is a device that my colleague has developed from computer science to help the visually challenged people to, to enable them to navigate across these spaces. IITD makes smart canes for blind. It costs only about 3,000 rupees, and it's an extremely useful device. President Mukherjee was, the former president, was very keenly interested in this technology, and this is being tested across the country by several partner organizations. The reason why I spent a little bit of time on technology, on the development of technology to enable the people, is that if you want to build a sustainable society, it is a requirement. And all that kind of technology can be developed only if you focus on basic research. You can never neglect basic research. And while you are doing basic research, it's also important that we nurture the next generation of researchers. Therefore, as professors, we need to do both basic research and also educate the next generation of the scientists. And it is not just enough if you do basic research and come up with new ideas. These ideas need to be incubated and they need to be commercialized. When I say commercialized, it is not with the intention of making profits and build huge industrial empires. These ideas had to be incubated with a focus on social needs of our people. Uh, Let me now come back to the third pillar, which I believe is very, very important if I want to build a sustainable world. Why is this important? When I talk about the society has various components. Um, uh, One of them, of course, is we are too diverse. Any society is very, very diverse, and it is important that if the society has to live in a harmonious way, everybody has an opportunity to excel in whatever strengths they have, and um, the society should be in such a way that we worry about the quality of life rather than the standard of living. You may be a billionaire, you may be a Nobel laureate winner, but at the end of the day, when I go back to my bed and when I sit and think, what thoughts come to my mind? Am I burnt by the feelings of jealousy, anxiety, addiction, or my mind is filled with love, affection, and compassion? That is what distinguishes somebody who has a good quality of life and who doesn't have. And it is also important that as human beings in the society, we build institutions and organizational structures which are functional. Is it a democratic structure, or is it for life presidentship, as we are hearing in some other countries? So it is important that from the village level to the panchayat level, to the district level, to the state level and country level, and so on, these structures have to be built, robust systems have to be built if you want to build a good society. But let me bring to your notice that scholars now think that if you want to build a sustainable society, um, be less materialistic. That is the first condition that we need to keep in our mind. We must use less energy, and wish our society should be inclusive. This is another thing that we need to keep in our mind, and the emphasis on neutral values. You know, as more and more technology is absorbed by us, we are becoming so self-centered. And we know in social theory that if a person becomes self-centered, they hardly contribute anything for the common good of the society. Today, uh, we can be considered as curiosity driven, pleasure seeking human animals. If we get into such a situation, it will deprive us of the opportunity to build a sustainable, inclusive society. So, therefore, sustainable society is not just technology, but it consists of various other components on which we need to keep our focus. So if I want to become sustainable, therefore, uh, we need values. When we talk about society, the societies are built on values. Values are at two different levels, as you know. At one level, I am trying to surmount my own personal ego. So it's an internal process. At another level, I am trying to create a positive change in others' lives through my actions. So this is an external activity. So both internally and externally, we need to have values. When we have these values embedded in us, we become more responsible human beings, right? We lead a life with responsibility. So when I have values and responsibility, then we'll start thinking about strategies in order to build a sustainable society, right? So therefore, I believe that these three are important basic processes if I want to build sustainability. Um, it is also important that we reinforce this. The better strategies should lead to better values amongst us, and then that should make us more responsible, because when I have a feedback, this feedback allows in us critical reflection and a re-evaluation of our strategies, so that we develop adaptive strategies, not fixed strategies, in order to build a sustainable society. Uh, when I have a combination of values, responsibility, and adaptable strategies in my life, then I'm sure it will take us from mindless competition to relational care. We start caring for each other instead of competing with each other mindlessly. And it will help us recognize the richness of the cultural diversity of our country, rather than unnecessarily indulge in identity politics. Um, it will help us in spiritual development than just worrying about material security. There can be no better statement than what comes from Bhagavad Gita. It says, in all actions, consider the common good. Today, with the absorption of this modern technology, we have become so self centered that we give too much of importance to personal autonomy. When there is too much of emphasis on personal autonomy, then we don't really worry about how my action is going to affect my neighbor, or it's going to affect the environment around me. So therefore, it is important to remember and recollect what Bhagavad Gita has told us. Consider the common good in all our actions. If you want to build a sustainable society, it's not just technology and economy, but we need to look at the social justice than being dominant over each other. Mahabharata tells us dharma exists for the welfare of all beings, hence that by which the welfare of all beings is sustained, that for sure is dharma, right? Uh, Quality of life is more important than standard of living, as just now I mentioned a few minutes ago. Um, this is what the Hindu prayer from the oral tradition tells us: Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. That is what is sustainable society, caring for each other, loving each other, helping each other, so that everybody lives happily. I believe that the mantra of sustainability is given here. from Upanishads. Om Sahanavavatu Sahanav Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahai Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. I think this is the essence of sustainability, where it says that may we all be protected, may we all be nourished, may we all work together with great energy, may our intellect be sharpened, let there be no animosity amongst us. This is the way to build a sustainable world. I can summarize this to conclude my talk by showing you the Nataraja pose. Here, the Nataraja is standing on a demon, which can be considered as ignorance. You remember in this hymn, we said, Tejasvi Navaditamastu, let our intellect be sharpened, let us come out of this ignorance. And that is what Nataraja is doing here. And the flames around Nataraja indicate energy, dynamism. And you can see that amidst all this, the Nataraja is in equilibrium with the entire universe. So that equilibrium, that dynamic equilibrium is what we need to achieve by using technology, by building robust economic systems, and by developing society